He goes, "Hey, bro, here's the correct poster." So I'm like,
Oh,
"Wait,
man.
what do you mean the correct poster?" He goes, "No, man, prejudging is happening right now. I lived in my car for 3 months. I dieted on bread and supplements. I give of myself 100%. I make sure that I'm at every training session, at every appointment. I don't miss a meal. I don't miss a pill. I don't miss any single thing, bro."
What's up, Desktopers? Xavier Wills here for Desktop Bodybuilding. In this interview of Sibusiso Kotelo, we discuss what really went down at the Arnold Classic in Brazil, how all-in Sibu is on his bodybuilding career from living in his car to taking out huge loans to support his career, plus his relationship with Shawn Rhoden, his mentor, and how the loss affected him, plus much more. I hope you guys really enjoy this interview, and if you do enjoy it, please give this video a thumbs up, smash that like button, also subscribe and hit the notification bell button. That way you won't miss out on any of the content from myself, Xavier Wills at Desktop Bodybuilding. Anyway guys, enjoy the interview. What's up, Desktopers? Xavier Wills here for Desktop Bodybuilding, and today I'm joined by Sibusiso Kotelo. He just missed out on competing at the 2022 Arnold Classic in Brazil, and we're going to talk about that plus much more. But Sibu, how are you doing under all the circumstances? Because you missed prejudging. I've heard all the stories. I heard Nick Strength and Power talk about it, who talked to you. I suppose, how are you doing after missing a contest that you've been prepping and hadn't competed for, you haven't competed for 3 years. So how did it, I suppose, impact you missing that contest?
Look, bro, I'll be very honest. I was gutted. I felt defeated. And, one has to take some level of responsibility. Could have done things better. Could have gotten a SIM card. You take certain things as very trivial when you travel to a country. And I say trivial because, number one, you make a basic assumption that everywhere you go in the country, they can speak English. It's not the case. I learned that the hard. It's just that obviously in the 2 years of me competing in the pro circuit, I was privileged enough to go to countries where English was a common language. Canada, America, South Korea, so having to come to a country like Brazil, it was really a culture shock. I could have prepped better for that, could have done more research. So yeah, I was really, really gutted. It but I'll be honest, it hurts. It hurts, as you said. I mean, I haven't been on stage for 3 years. I've been prepping for this competition for 12 weeks, flat on, working my ass off. I knew I'd bought the best package I've had to date. And then I just missed out on prejudging, and then I got disqualified. But right now, bro, I am on top of the world. I'm so excited about what's to come. I keep it moving, man. I always try to find a silver lining in everything. This has been an experience. It's been a learning curve, and it's something what my coach calls school fees, bro. Just you're paying live school fees, bro. So I'm learning, and it's something that I'm now ready for. Should I travel to any country for that matter? There's certain things I'm not going to take for granted. There's certain things I'm not going to take as trivial, and they're going to be very, very important for me to make sure that going into any country I compete in, stuff like this doesn't happen.
Yeah, for sure. And while we're talking as well, I'll pop some video up on the screen so people can see actually what you were looking like, because they've actually allowed you to guest pose sort of thing, I suppose, at the night show or whenever it was at prejudging.
Yeah.
When that was, but you look fantastic, and many people are saying, easy top 3. Where would Sibu have placed, all that sort of stuff. But before I get into your opinion on that, I guess, what actually went down from the time you landed in Brazil and everything that happened?
Yeah.
How did it transpire that you actually missed the prejudging and was disqualified?
Look, let me give you the highlights so you don't make this video too long, brother. So
Yeah.
I was privileged enough that a few guys had known, obviously, because I'd announced. I've made it very obvious and pretty straightforward that I'm going to be doing the show probably 2 months already, 2 months ago already. So I had one of the guys who works for the NPC this side reach out to me. Hey, bud, I'm looking forward to hosting you in our country. Now, the mistake that I made was me assuming that he could speak English, not realizing that the whole time he was actually using Google Translate to speak to me in my DM. So I took that for granted, right? So we're busy having a back and forth communication. In my head, this guy can speak proper English, but meanwhile, he's actually using Google Translate. So nonetheless, I got to on WhatsApp. He sent me a poster for the press conference, which I attended. And then the next day, he sends me a picture of a guy who was going to do my tan, told me to be there by 8 o'clock. I was there at 8:30 because I was waiting in line for the other pros to get their tans. And then subsequently, I then asked, I'm like, hey, what's the, situation in terms of the show? Because I obviously know I've done a few pro shows. It's obvious. I know there's a prejudging. I know there's a main show. And then he sends me a poster that was a previous poster that was not edited that had the evening show only. So then in my head, I'm like, okay, well, maybe because it's an Arnold, I've never done an Arnold show before, right? So I'm like, okay, maybe it's an Arnold show. Maybe this is live judging. This is, again, my mistake. I speculated, okay? So I was there, finished my tan, had a meal. I then get into an Uber. And then on my way, because mind you, I didn't have a SIM card. So I was literally reliant on everywhere I go, I'd have to be on Wi-Fi. So as I leave the venue, I'm off Wi-Fi. And then for some reason, I could see that there's a picture that needs to load that is coming from this individual. So I'm like, you know what? I'll open this picture as soon as I get to the hotel. Get to the hotel. As I open this picture, he goes, hey, bro, here's the correct poster. So I'm like, wait, what do you mean the correct poster? He goes, no, man, prejudging is happening right now. Now, this is 7 minutes or 5 minutes past 12. I'm like, bro, the poster says 12 o'clock. He goes, yes, prejudging is happening right now. So I'm not sure if he thought in his head, I'm still in the venue. I'm just, walking around because obviously it's an expo. I'm like, bro, I just got to the hotel. Are you kidding me? So obviously I wasn't staying close to the hotel, and everyone knows who's been to Brazil. Brazil is notorious for its traffic. So an 8-kilometer trip here could take you no less than 40 minutes. So get an Uber once again, run back. As I get there, prejudging's over. That's why obviously everyone saw me literally in the last 30 seconds of prejudging. And that's how I lost out. And again, bro, I think it's very important for me to emphasize it's as no one's fault in terms of the head judges there. Tamar and Tariq were absolutely gutted and heartbroken. So much that Tamar came up to me, and said, he's going to try and make a plan to see if I can still do finals and get a score, which he then also felt is also going to put me at disadvantage because, obviously we all know how bodybuilding is scored. Even if I did have a final score and opposing routine score, it still put me last, which will probably would have been more of an upset, in terms of people, because he'd known that I've already garnered some sense of, Brazilian following, people excited to see me. There was a lot of, media coverage about me coming into the show. So he then decided, hey, listen, it's not going to work. Me scoring you is not going to work. Also, he'd be going against the rules, which I absolutely understand. Rules are there to keep consistency and fairness. So I was like, listen, I respect the rules. I respect, the NPC Pro League rules. I absolutely understand. And I was about to literally pack my stuff and leave. So he then goes, listen, the best I can do, because people are still eager to see you on stage, you're more than welcome to guest post. I was like, absolutely, yes. Took off my clothes, put some tan on, got my glaze, got on stage, and I guest post, buddy. So that's literally the summary of what went down. It's as no one's fault. It's not my coach's fault. My coach is my coach. He was there to make sure that I look fantastic. He did exactly that. He's not my babysitter. I'm a pro. I'm 30 years old. I'm old enough. I've taken a certain level of responsibility of what I can do next to do better, in terms of the language barrier. And I think what a lot of people are also not mindful of, I was not the only person that was late because of the very same issues of miscommunication. Really? Yeah, there was another pro, Akshan Nadi from Iraq.
Oh, yep. Was it Ahmed Ashkenani?
Yeah, he was 20 minutes late for the show, prejudging because of the very same reason.
Wow.
Communication barriers. So it wasn't. My story only became more. How do I say this? It became worse than what it is because I missed the whole prejudging. Do you know what I mean? He missed half of his prejudging. Luckily, the guys were still on stage being compared, so he was able to still, get part of his scoring. But the language barrier is a thing, you know. And again, as I said, it is my fault for not, you know, having that hindsight in terms of, you know, not taking for granted that, hey, listen, I'm not competing in Canada, where everyone competing in America for that matter. I'm in a country where it's not a first language, it's not a second language. Some of them genuinely don't speak English at all. So trying to get an Uber on time here is a bit of a hassle. Trying to get food is a bit of a hassle. You know, yes, there's technology now with Google Translate, but again, it was my fault for not having a SIM card, because as soon as I step out to the hotel, I don't have Google Translate at my disposal. So it just became a big life lesson to prepare better going into a country where English is not a first language.
Yeah, for sure. And it's big of you to say that, you know, this is my fault, I should have checked this and stuff like that. And that's actually a cool thing, because, you know, when you listen to a lot of, you know, motivational sort of stuff and life advice sort of stuff, they say take responsibility for everything. And that's what.
Oh, no, absolutely. No, absolutely, bro.
Awesome.
I'm not. No, bro. And it's important for people to realize that I'm not a victim to what happened. You know what I mean? I know what happened. I know the role that I could have played to make this not work out the way it did. And I absolutely take responsibility. You know what I mean? I looked introspectively and I realized, listen, number one, as I said, I shouldn't have not taken it for granted that I'm traveling in a country where English is not a first language. So how do you prepare for that? Do you know what I mean? Get to a country, go to the airport, get a SIM card. That way you're always mobile. You always have an app that you can use in terms of, you know, because I'll give you an example. Canada, I didn't need Canada, even if I didn't have a SIM card, I didn't need one in Canada. Canada, everywhere you go, there's Wi-Fi. They have Wi-Fi's in their Uber. Do you know what I mean? So because of that experience, my brain then goes, okay, I think the rest of the world is like that. It's not. You know what I mean? You got to be respectful of the fact that certain countries operate certain in a different way. And I mean, being in Brazil, even for that matter, I did get a SIM card, actually. And a lot of people don't know that. But getting data on the SIM card does not work the same way as in my country. In my country, getting data is as simple as going to buy candy from a shop. Here, you have to enter security, a security social number. I don't have one. I'm not Brazilian. I try to enter my passport number. It doesn't work. So there's just certain rules of engagement that one has to understand when entering a country, that you got to go through a mental checklist of saying, hey, listen, this country has these rules of engagement. How do I navigate these things to make sure that I do the best that I can? So I absolutely take responsibility for what has happened. And it's no one's fault. It's not my coach's fault. It's not the head judge's fault. It was literally, everything was purely based on making very, very silly, uncalculated assumptions that costed me the whole show.
Yeah. And I do hope as well, obviously, you know, they were using Google Translate, but obviously, you know, bodybuilding, you know, the Mr. Olympia, when we go to the Mr. Olympia, the primary language there is English. It's in the US and all that sort of stuff. So I think they, 100%. You know, for them, they need to really, I suppose, cater to the English language speaking people, which is obviously a majority of the people that compete in bodybuilding.
The majority, 100%.
Yeah, so 100%. I think in the future, obviously, you know, you're taking responsibility for your part in it, which I think is actually really cool and really commendable and all that. But obviously, you know, the promoters sending out wrong posters and stuff like that, that's obviously, or whoever sent it out, is an error on their part. So I think that, you know, going forward, they've obviously learned a lesson as well as you. So I suppose the next question is, I know you probably don't want to say I would have placed here or I would have placed there, but where do you think you would have sort of, I suppose, lined up, and how do you think you would have compared against that sort of top three in that lineup?
I'm going to tell you exactly what I told Generation Iron a few hours ago, bro. And it's not an arrogance thing. It's not and if people know me very well, I'm not an arrogant person by any stretch of the imagination. But I'm telling you right now, if I did that show the way it's supposed to have gone, I would have won the whole show. Only because I'm confident in the package that I brought. I was the biggest, I was the most shredded, I was in more conditioning, I was more proportional, symmetrical. I believe I ticked all the boxes. And it's not even from a place of being arrogant or cocky or whatever the case may be. It's just me purely believing in my abilities and talents and believing in the fact that I worked hard. And I'm still going to continue to work hard. But everyone says I would have placed top three. I believe I would have won the whole thing.
Yeah, easily top three. No doubt about that. When I looked at the video, like I saw some iPhone videos from the side, and I've seen a few different angles of you on stage. And I think that sometimes the iPhone videos show more than the actual webcast because it's a little bit shadowed and everything. Because I saw the one where you're pulling back and your back is inside out. And I remember seeing a photo of Richard Jones back in the day, and he had that real dry and crispness to his muscle with the roundness as well, which is something that you don't always see. And you had that. And I was like, wow, I'm so annoyed with this guy. Wasn't able to actually compete in that show because I would have loved to have seen how you matched up against Raphael and how it all sort of played out that way. Because I think it would have been very 100%. Close between you two, in my opinion. And the third place finisher as well, he was fantastic as well, very hard. But I think you and Raphael had that really nice shape.
Look, don't get me wrong, brother. I absolutely respect every single guy that was on the stage. The guys really, really brought it. If anything, I was more annoyed at myself, as you said, is that I wasn't able to measure myself up against those guys, because for me, doing this show specifically was also wanting to gauge where I am, you know, seeing what work I put in, because remember, South Africa was in strict lockdown for the last 2 years. So all I could do was just eat and train. I couldn't compete, whatever the case may be. So for me, it was also a self, you know, realization of wanting to see where I stand amongst the great guys that have placed second. I mean, I think William has placed second at a prog show. There's the guy from Germany. He's a beast of a human being. I also wanted to see where I placed against him. And then obviously the obvious guy that, you know, going into the show that I was going to be the biggest contender was Raphael. Huge respect for him. Love his physique, love his flow. So I just wanted to see where I measure up to guys that I think we're all coming up in the ranks together, you know, being guys that, as I've said, being under 30, you know. So I wanted to see where I fit into the whole, I'm not going to call it a new era of bodybuilding, but let's call it that just for a lack of a better term, you know what I mean? So for me, it was more of that eagerness to see, okay, cool, here we are. We're starting to slowly getting into a new, call it a new breed of bodybuilders. You know, look at guys that are literally, I mean, under 32, Samson Dawuda, Quincy Saraya, Blessing, Regan Grimes. I just wanted to see where I level up in terms of being in the same kind of age group, caliber of guys. We're all just in our infancy of our bodybuilding career. So for me, that was the biggest thing that I think hurt me the most, you know?
Yeah, and because like you said, there is a whole new wave of guys coming in, all the names you mentioned. And I love the fact that a lot of these guys are very aesthetic as well. There's a lot of round, bubbly
100%.
More waist. And I love that, man, because it's bringing back sort of the old school and the way bodybuilding is moving now with, you know, all the unfortunate passings that we've seen in bodybuilding, which is, you know, been heartbreaking. I'm sure it's affected you, and I'll ask you a bit about that as well. But it's, you know, these guys probably, you know, maybe including yourself, go, well, I don't want to blow up to be, you know, a 300-pound monster on stage because the high risks. Maybe I can bring the aesthetics and put as much muscle as I can on that sort of physique. But I suppose 100%. You were mentored by Shawn Rhoden, who, you know, unfortunately passed away, I think 46 years of age, and incredibly young, and a guy that was wanting to come back and get on stage. I suppose, how did that affect you, man? Like, in terms of not just losing a guy who's your mentor that you're friends with and all that, but also in terms of your mind, in terms of bodybuilding? Because I can even imagine, like, I think about it because I've, you know, interviewed some of these guys that have passed, and it's like sort of hit me, and I've gone, wow, like, that's scary. You look at the, you know, you look at the Arnold Classic stage and you go, you know, Cedric was up there, Shawn was up there, and they're not here anymore, and Luke Sando and all those. How's that
Luke
affect
Sando, Dennis McCarver? Yeah, man. It's look, when I heard the news about Shawn Rhoden, I think I was actually driving, right? And you know, it's a bad habit that we all do, that as soon as we get into a red light, we just want to quickly check our phones. Yeah. So I got into a red light. I'm like, oh man, there's a lot of traffic here. Quickly went to my phone and I read it, but my brain couldn't conceptualize it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm like, no, man, it's not, you know, and then obviously your brain just then quickly goes, it's fake news. It's one of those things where someone, you know, people just, they kill people on social media and you're like, come on, dude, like, the guy's alive. Let's not do that. Okay. So anyway, I drive, get to the gym, and one of my colleagues looks at me, and now he's looking at me with that face of, are you just going to confirm what I just read, or we're just going to not talk about it? Okay. Yeah. So I'm like, nah, okay. So anyway, I pick up the phone and I call Stan Animal, and I'm like, bro, like, what is going on? And he's like, yeah, brother, it's true. I'm like, wow. I immediately got back into my car. I went home, locked myself up in my house, and my brain, I think for about 3 days, if I'm being very honest with you, I was just purely in denial. And mostly because 2 days prior to his passing away, so we had this ritual, and in fact, I spoke about it on. I've never had an app called Viber up until I met Shawn Rhoden. He's the only guy that made me use that app because he thought that video quality on that app was better than WhatsApp, whatever the case may be. So we had this weird ritual where he'd call me on like a random either Thursday morning or Friday afternoon. Don't ask me why those times, but it just happened. So I'd spoken to the guy 2 days before his passing, and like we were fine. It was literally, and our phone calls were never long. It was never tell me how your week is going kind of conversation. It was literally, hey, what's up? He called me Sibo, and it was an inside joke between me and him. He'd be like, yeah, what's up, Sibo? He calls me Soul as well. I'm like, yeah, I'm good, Soul. And then he's like, nah, man, just checking in, everything good. I'm like, bro, we keep it pushing. Drops the phone. Our conversations were probably 11 seconds, 15 seconds, but it was literally just the thing that it did. Do you know what I mean? And I think it hit me harder on the following Thursday when I realized I'm never getting that phone call ever again.
Yeah.
So for me, I was like, okay, this is it. And having to look at that app and realizing that one person that I use that app with will never ever call me again. Yeah, man. I can't begin to make you understand the level of hurt, and yeah, I can't put it into words, man.
Of course, yeah. And grief's a funny thing because everyone deals with it differently. And we all have these sorts of, now with social media, like where, when someone passes, like you got private messages with someone or direct messages, and you look at them and you go, I can't just send them a message now. It's a very weird thing in your own head that you have to sort of, I suppose, conceptualize. And like you said, for 3 days, you were in denial. And even though when you say it out loud, it's true, but you've still got this denial mindset, which is very unusual. And it's funny how we go into this almost like shock sort of feeling when you lose someone close, and obviously it depends how close and all that sort of stuff as to how much it affects you. But
100%.
I think as well, the whole bodybuilding community has had some low level of that, even if they don't know these people personally, because they hear all the interviews, they see their social media, and they almost feel that they know them personally. And we've lost all these names. And that's why everyone is, I suppose, in shock right now. But has it changed the way you go about anything in terms of your bodybuilding? Do you go, okay, well, I'm going to stay a little leaner, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to get my checks? Is there any stuff like that you're doing actively to lessen the risk?
Look, man, if I'm being very honest with you, I'm not going to say it's changed much. And the only reason is because he's been one of those people that has helped me navigate doing it on a healthy way, if that makes sense.
Of course, yeah.
And he's also been able to help me build a team. You know what I mean? Like, there's certain things that I've always taken for granted. Like, a lot of people know this, I'm a recluse by nature. I keep to myself. So the idea of social media actually gives me social anxiety. So just having someone to, you know what I mean, which is kind of ironic, right? Yeah. So like, I have a social media manager. I have, so let me just that's just an example. But basically, I've got 2 medical doctors. In fact, I'm traveling with one of them to my next show. I've got so I do bloods every 6 weeks. I've got a chiropractor that does my adjustments, see them twice a week. I've got a sport massage therapist. I've got a guy that's literally responsible just for my recovery. He owns a recovery center in South Africa. I do my ice baths, infrared, sauna. I've literally got a team around me that ensures not only am I doing this to the best of my ability, but making sure that my health is number one. I donate blood every 2 months to make sure, we call it doing all change. I do my IV drips almost every 6 weeks. So, and I'll tell you the irony about how this team came about. The team came about when someone interviewed Shawn Rhoden, and they asked him, when did he become Mr. Olympia? His reply was absolutely phenomenal. He said, I became Miss Olympia the year before I won Miss Olympia, only because I started realizing, what does Miss Olympia do? How does Miss Olympia live? How is he in mannerism, etiquette, whatever the case may be? So when I looked at that, I'm like, how does a pro bodybuilder that's trying to make sure that he's going to be in the top echelons of the sport in a few years live? You create a team. You may have a social media team. You're going to have a marketing team. It was unfortunate that this time around, I didn't travel with my PR team, but you know what I mean? You have these people around you that make sure that your health is good, that make sure that, your health. As I said, I've got 2 medical doctors that in my country don't even sit in the same province. So these guys do exactly the same thing, but they don't, I know it sounds very weird, but they don't communicate. So when I do my bloods, they get sent to a lab. They both get, they interpret it differently, because I need that objectivity, because I don't want someone too close who's also going to sugar brush or sugarcoat a reality about my bloods, you know what I mean? And what I've also done strategically is that one is in the bodybuilding vicinity. So when he reads my bloods, he also knows how to read them with a pinch of salt in terms of understanding that I'm a bodybuilder. And then the other one, I made sure that he knows nothing about bodybuilding. Like, he knows about the sport, but he's not really aware about the sport. So when he reads my bloods, or whatever the case may be, he then reads it from a place of, what should a normal person be reading? So when you combine the two, there's a very symbiotic relationship in terms of being able to say, okay, cool, this is where he is, this is what I think he should be doing. So yeah, man, I've always been blessed to have a team around me, bro. You see one man on stage, but I promise you, if you see the WhatsApp group of they call themselves Team TKP, because I've been called the Kid Prodigy. But bro, I promise you, 2 medical doctors, and my coach, my head coach, strength and conditioning coach, my meal prep company is there, and everyone is there to make sure that I do this at the best of my ability, and also I do this as healthy as possibly that I can. Yeah.
It sounds like obviously your whole team, I'm assuming you have like some sponsorships and stuff in terms of like, you know, your therapies and all that sort of stuff, because from what you just listed off, like for a casual person, an amateur bodybuilder to pay for all that sort of stuff, it would cost quite a bit. So is that a lot of sponsors or?
Look, I'll be very honest with you. I could say 80% of my team, they literally with me because they invested in my success. I don't pay a cent, bro. I'm just blessed enough that I've got people that are just willing to work with me, because I give of myself 100%. I make sure that I'm at every training session, at every appointment. I don't miss a meal. I don't miss a pill. I don't miss any single thing, bro. You know, so, I mean, if anything, bro, I'm actually trying to get a sponsor for my next show. You know, a lot of people actually might think that I'm rolling in sponsorships right now. It's not really the case. I'm actually trying to get a sponsor for my next upcoming show that my coach and I have decided to do. I had to cough up probably 100K, well, in rands, for this show, myself and my coach, out of our own pockets. Wow. And brief, I'm being very honest with you, I'll continue taking out loans and doing this, because this is all I know how to do, bro. I love what I do. I don't see myself doing anything else with my life, bro. It would honestly feel like death. You know, so and it's actually quite ironic, because I actually stumbled into bodybuilding. I was never one of those kids that, you know, idolized bodybuilders growing up. But when I found the sport and I found the passion for it, I've never looked back, bro.
That's incredible, man. So you're all in. You're really all in to do this and to spend so much and to do all that. You're all in. And often when you hear these stories, it's like Kai Green. He went all in and he had no money, and he did the New York Pro, and then he did the Colorado. And he said to Shawn Rhoden, or whoever promoted it, he said, thank God you had a best posing award, because it was 10K or something, or 5K. And he won that because he said, I had no money otherwise. And he went from that to obviously, you know, now where he's at financially and what he's done in the Olympia and everything. It's pretty incredible. And he was all in. And it sounds very similar to what you're doing right now, which is pretty cool.
You gotta be all in, man. You can't do things half-hearted. You can't be half invested in anything that you do. You're not going to yield the results that you want. I'm yet to hear of anyone succeeding in this life doing it half-assed. You're either all in or you're not at all. You know, when I started bodybuilding, I literally got into Joburg, which is another province in South Africa. I had a full tank of petrol. I had 125 rands, which is probably what I think it's probably $1.50 in terms of equivalent, in terms of currency, or I think $10. And that's all I had. I lived in my car for 3 months. I dieted on bread and supplements because luckily I was sponsored by one of the companies in South Africa that only gave me supplements. And I did not complain, bro, because I knew this is all I wanted to do. And the irony, the biggest irony that I don't know is that by qualification, I'm actually an engineer. So I could have fallen back into my engineering degree, gotten a job and done that. But because I knew this is what I wanted to do, every single thing in me knew this is it for me. This is it, bro. This is it. I can't express to you enough how much I love what I do, and I wouldn't change it for the world. It's hard. It's difficult. I get to places in preps where I look back and I'm like, you know what, I could have played chess. But I'm like, man, I wouldn't change this for the world, man.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, because those last few weeks, obviously, they get brutal, especially when you're low body fat. Seeing what your conditioning was like, and it looked by far the best of your career. And I just want to ask you as well, when you were on stage, obviously you did your posing and stuff like that. Do you think your physique was at its best then, or did you not pump up? Like, what was the deal with you? And I suppose, do you think the stress affected your look? Because
I slightly had spilt, only because I saw when I saw the video, as you said, from the high definition of one of the gents that sent it to me, who has his iPhone, I realized my hammies had just spilt. I think I just, because of the stress, you know, my cortisol levels kind of shot up. But otherwise, trust me, let me just put it like this. Let me put it like this. The next show that I'm doing, I'm going to make the show look like a before picture.
Awesome. I love that. Because, yeah, I was going to say, just the only area I noticed on your physique that was holding anything was just the hammies and glutes a little bit, but everywhere else was crisp as, and by far harder than I've seen you.
It was. It's because it's literally, that's where I hold most. And obviously because I just stressed, I didn't have, enough time to get my head back into the game, whatever the case may be. But trust me, the next show that I'm doing, we are adamant on making sure that this looks like a preview of what I'm actually capable of doing.
That's incredible. And I had one more question to ask you, and then we'll wrap things up. But what's bodybuilding like back in South Africa? Because, being outside, I'm in Australia, I'm on the other side of the world just about.
Yeah.
And you hear all these stories. I've seen documentaries about, like the way, I suppose, the country is run. And it sounds like, you hear a lot of stories about it sounds really dangerous. And then you hear all the other stuff. And I'm sure it's just subsections of the country. But what's it like, I suppose? What's it been like during COVID? And what was it like, I suppose? What's it like as a bodybuilder, and what's the fitness community like?
Look, bodybuilding in South Africa is growing. I'll tell you that much. And if anything, partly, and again, I said this in one of the interviews that I had, me doing bodybuilding and especially taking it to this extent, trying to take it to this level, it's also a way of trying to show my fellow South Africans, the guys that are aspiring to do what I do, that it's possible, number one. And two, it's also just to raise a benchmark that, having an IFBB Pro card is not enough anymore. We gotta be getting to places where we now want to stand toe to toe with the best in the world. Because, bro, if I to take you to a random show in a random province in South Africa, you would be so mind blown, and the talents that we have. People look at me and go, oh my gosh, she's so big. Look at those lines, genetics. I sit down in some bodybuilding shows and I go, if the world just could see this guy or that lady or this gent or this junior. South Africa is a growing community. We do have our own flaws. There's certain things that I've also now started to learn on an international, platform, where you realize, the brotherhood is a bit, more, it's much better rather internationally. There's an ethos of trying to help each other. South Africa still has those cliques that I think we need to get away from, because it's actually holding us back. But, if you're to iron all of that out, South Africa has huge talent. When I got my pro card, I think there were about 6 or 7 IFBB pros. Right now, there's about 21. It's a small number compared to how many people are in South Africa. but we are growing because now we've got pro qualifiers in South Africa. So there's more opportunities for guys to get their pro card. But what I'm scared of is that I don't want guys to merely see the pro card as the pinnacle of the career. If anything, I want them to see it as the beginning of their career, because now it's like, okay, cool. Because that's what happened to me. When I got my pro card, I promise you, Shawn Rhoden, Shawn Rhoden is a nice guy. He was a nice guy, smiled, whatever the case may be. But when he had to be hard on me, he had to be, and it worked because I'm that kind of person. I need that kind of honesty. I remember getting my pro card. We took the picture on stage. We got off stage. Plat. You know that plat they give you when you win your pro card? I was holding that, bro. I'm like, I'm flying with this thing to South Africa. I'm going to show everyone I got that pro card. I remember him looking at me, coming to my room. He goes, okay, throw that in the bin. So I'm like, sorry, what? He goes, yeah, it's done now. You've won your pro card. Everyone is taking the pictures. Now the work starts. Bro, I'm sitting there. I'm like, is this guy serious? I just became the first black guy in the history of South Africa to get a pro card. You tell him to throw my pro card in the bin. It wasn't because he's saying throw the pro card in the bin, but for him it was figurative of saying, listen, the work starts now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It was, hey, listen.
You know what I mean? It was, hey, listen, you've gotten your pro card, we've taken the pictures, now everyone knows you're pro. But now what's next? This is not the pinnacle of your career. If anything, this is the beginning of it. So now you got to double down, work even harder, make sure that you're putting in the hours. So, Bruce, South Africa is a growing industry. We have so much talent, and I think we're just going to get better. Just watch out for a few South African names. Muzima Luleke is a 2-on-2 pro. He's coming up. Watch out for that guy. I promise you guys. Me and him actually competed against each other as juniors, and he kicked my ass as a junior. But watch out for him, 2-on-2 pro. We've got stellar, beautiful ladies coming up in bikini. I could mention a few names. Vanessa De Freitas, also one of them. I think she competed about 2 years ago in Spain. Beautiful physique. So my mentor, actually the guy, one of the guys that actually got me into bodybuilding, Andrew Hudson, also very, very beautiful physique. So we are a group of guys that, are pushing the envelope, trying to make sure that South Africa gets on the map, and we will. We're known for having good rugby. Watch us have good bodybuilding as well.
Man, that's awesome. I love to hear it. Sibu, we're getting cut off in a second because for whatever Zoom is not recognizing my premium membership. So I better wrap it up. But mate, I cannot wait to see you for the rest of the year because you're going to be doing a few other shows. Quickly tell us which shows you're doing next before it wraps up.
I'm just going to tell you about the next one that I'm doing. The rest are going to be a surprise. I'm doing the Monsterism show in June, the 18th and 19th in South Korea.
Awesome. Sweet, man. Thank you so much. I'll wrap up this interview before we get cut off. That's Sibu Kotelo. Check him out on Instagram. If you want to sponsor him, send him a DM on Instagram or whatever, and I'm sure he'll be able to get in touch with him. So for Xavier,
thank you so much, my brother. Really appreciate it, brother.
No worries at all, man. So for Xavier Wills, Sibu Kotelo, we are out. Hope you guys enjoyed my interview of Sibu Kotelo. He's a pleasure to have on, very upfront and honest, took responsibility, and I think he's a real class act on and off camera as well. So thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure to have you on the show, Sibu. And if you did enjoy this interview, please give the video a thumbs up, smash that like button, also subscribe and hit the notification bell button. That way you'll be notified of every video that goes up for myself, Xavier Wills at Desktop Bodybuilding. Also head over to hdmuscle.com, enter the code DESKTOP, you'll save yourself 10% off your entire order. And if there's already discounts on there, use Desktop and you'll save yourself an extra 10% as well. So no matter what you're winning when you use that code. So the link is in the description below as well. So make sure you check it out. So that's it from me. For Xavier Wills, Desktop Bodybuilding, we are out.